This is the homework for solving system of equations by using the elimination method. When solving system of equations by using the elimination method, we want to first see if we can identify two terms that are the same that will create a zero pair. And if you look, we have a positive 2y and a negative 2y. And when we add these together, it'll create a zero pair. So by using the elimination method, we add the two equations and we eliminate the y terms because we created the zero pair. So we have 2x plus 3x equals 5x. 2y minus 2y equals 0y, created the zero pair. And then we have more positives than negatives, so we know it's going to be a positive value. And the signs are opposite, so you subtract. 12 minus 2 is 10. And now we can rewrite this equation as 5x equals 10. And now we're going to go ahead and solve for x. Inverse property of multiplication is division, so we're going to divide both sides by 5 because this 5 creates the giant 1. So 1 multiplied by x is x, and then 10 divided by 5 is 2. Now that we know the value of x, we can go ahead and plug it into either of these equations. And I chose to plug it into the top equation, 2x plus y equals negative 2, because to me it's simpler than the bottom equation. So now that I'm going to plug in x with 2. So instead of 2 multiplied by x, we have 2 multiplied by 2. 2 multiplied by 2 equals 4. And we still don't have the y term by itself. So inverse property of addition is subtraction. We subtract 4 from both sides, created a zero pair. Here, they're both negatives, so we know it's going to be a negative value. When the signs are the same, you add the terms together. So negative 4 and negative 2 equals negative 6. Now we have 2y. This is multiplication. Inverse property of multiplication is division. Divide by 2 because it creates the giant 1. What you do to one side, you do to the other. And we have 1 multiplied by y, which equals y. And then negative 6 divided by 2 equals a negative 3. So our solution is 2 comma negative 3. And always make sure that you take your solution and plug it back into the original equations to make sure that it holds true for both equations. If it doesn't, you made a mistake somewhere. Problem 2, we're going to use the elimination method, and I see that if I add these two equations, the x terms will cancel out because they create a zero pair. Because 4x minus 4x equals 0x. And then here we have more positives than negatives, so we know it's going to be a positive value. Signs are opposite, so you subtract. 4y minus 2y equals 2y. Here they're both negatives, so you keep the sign. If they're the same sign, you keep the sign, and then you add them together. So negative 2 and negative 1 equals negative 3. So now I have 2y equals negative 3. We're going to solve for y. So inverse property of multiplication is division. So we created that giant 1. What you do to one side, you do to the other. So 1 multiplied by y equals y. And then we're left with negative 3/2. Or you can convert it into decimal form. Negative 3 divided by 2 equals negative 1/2. And I prefer to put it in decimal form because now that I know what y equals, I can plug it back into the original equations, either the top one or the bottom one. And I'm choosing the top one, and I rewrote it here. And so when I plug it in, I like working with decimals instead of fractions, but either way will work. So I'm going to choose negative 1.5, so I'm going to substitute that in for y. And now I have negative 2 multiplied by negative 1.5 equals a positive 3. Still don't have x by itself, so inverse property of addition is subtraction, created the zero pair. When the signs are the same, you keep the sign and then add them together, so we know it's going to be a negative value. So negative 3 and negative 1 equals negative 4. Inverse property of multiplication is division. So 4 divided by 4 is 1. Negative 4 divided by positive 4 equals negative 1. So x equals negative 1. A lot of my students make a mistake when they go to write the solution because they think since this is the second value that they found, they put it second as an ordered pair. But remember, the solution is written as an ordered pair x comma y. So the first term you're going to write is negative 1, and then comma for y, negative 3/2. Problem 3, we need to identify if there are zero pairs when we add the two equations to use the elimination method to solve the system. And we can see here that the y's do create a zero pair. We have negative y and a positive y. That creates a zero pair. And here we have x and x. So x plus x equals 2x. That created a zero pair. We have more negatives than positives, so we know it's going to be a negative value. Signs are opposite, so you subtract. 3 minus 2 is 1, so you get negative 1. Now I'm going to rewrite the equation since there are no y terms. So we have 2x equals negative 1. Inverse property of multiplication is division. Created the giant 1. What you do to one side, you do to the other. So we get x equals negative 1/2 or negative 0.05. And again, I converted it to decimal form. I just find it easier to plug decimals back into the equations than fractions, but whichever one you prefer. And so I can choose either equation to plug my value back in, and I'm going to choose the bottom one. So here I rewrote the bottom equation. So x equals negative 0.5. So I'm going to substitute x with negative 0.5. And now I'm going to solve for y. Inverse property of subtraction is addition. So I'm going to add 0.5 to both sides, created a zero pair. And then we have negative 3 plus 0.5. We have more negatives than positives, so you know it's going to be a negative value. Signs are opposite, so you subtract. So negative 3, or 3 minus 0.5 is 2.5, so you get a negative 2.5. So now we have the y and the x term, or the value for x and y. And so our solution is negative 0.5 and negative 2.5. For problem 4, we first want to identify if there's any terms when we add the equations that will create a zero pair. And the x terms do create a zero pair. We have 6x minus 6x equals 0x. 5y plus 7y equals 12y. And 4 plus 20 equals 24. So now I'm going to rewrite the equation since we eliminated the x term. And we have 12y equals 24. Inverse property of multiplication is division. Created the giant 1. What you do to one side, you do to the other. So 1 multiplied by y equals y. 24 divided by 12 equals 2. So we found half of our solution, the y value. So now we're going to go ahead and plug it back into either of the equations. We can plug it into the top equation or the bottom equation. It doesn't matter. but I chose to go ahead and plug it into the top equation. And so I'm going to substitute y with 2 because y equals 2. So 5 multiplied by y, we get 5 multiplied by 2, which equals 10. Still don't have x by itself, so inverse property of addition is subtraction, created the 0 pair. We have more negatives than positives, so we know it's going to be a negative value. Signs are opposite, so you subtract. 10 minus 4 is 6, so we get negative 6. Now we need to do inverse property of multiplication, which is division. We're going to divide both sides by 6. This creates the giant 1. What you do to one side, you do to the other. And so we get x equals negative 1. So our solution is negative 1, comma 2. And again, make sure the x term goes, the x value goes before the y value. It's x, comma y. And always check your solution to both equations to the original system. Put them back in. If it doesn't work, then your solution's incorrect. For number 5, we want to determine if any of the terms will create a 0 pair when we add the two equations. And you can see that the y terms do create a 0 pair because negative 3 and a positive 3 equals 0. So we eliminated the y terms. 2x plus 4x equals 6x. 12 plus 24 equals 36. So I'm going to rewrite the equation. 6x equals 36. Inverse property of multiplication is division. We divide both sides by 6. Created the giant 1. What you do to one side, you do to the other. So we have 1 multiplied by x, which equals x. 36 divided by 6 equals 6. And now we can plug this, the x value back into either of these equations. It doesn't matter. It'll work for both. So I chose to plug it into the bottom equation this time. And so I have 4 multiplied by x. Well, what does x equal? X equals 6. So I have 4 multiplied by 6, which equals 24. Still don't have y by itself, so we need to move this term to the right side. Inverse property of addition is subtraction, created a 0 pair. And then on the right side, we also created a 0 pair. 24 minus 24 equals 0. So we put, you can't just leave it blank. You have to put the value of 0 here. And so now we have 3y equals 0. Inverse property of multiplication is division. So we're going to divide both sides by 3. Created the giant 1. 1 multiplied by y is y. 0 divided by 3 is 0. So our solution to our system is 6, 0.